ones in that. It was really like super slow motion in that one, because I saw it when it was replayed on the BBC last year, and it's just part of the game, really, isn't it? I find them particularly amusing. I did think Jamie Shaw was dead at one point from his reaction, but lo and behold, he gets up and he's involved in the next play. So fair play to him. For me, Atkin was the man of the match as well. I think he just had all-round game. He was involved in all the best bits. I think he stood up a bit more than possibly he has done in a few games, and I think he's just grown and grown this season. And I thought he was fantastic on the night. But can't not love Craig Hall. Coming back for a second debut, and the story about Sheen's meeting Hall and Crooks on the coach was quite funny as well. And hi, you must be Ben Crooks. Here's your kit. It reminds me of enough amateur games where that's happened. But it was a feel good story, wasn't it?
I mean, it made sense to shove the two players who've been playing together all year together
down the same edge. Yeah. Is that KR's golden edge now? Are we developing one of our own?
We will find out. I'm working on a piece, let's say, to fully flesh out the golden edge stats. And talking of stats, Hull FC had over 50 more carries and used that to make over 400 more metres than their near neighbours, but could only make 3 breaks, which was matched by the Rovers. Hull FC tackled at a big 3.7% better tackle success rate and conceded 5 fewer penalties, with the Robins giving up 11 of those. The only key stat that the victorious Rovers won on was errors, even though they still made 14 errors themselves in a game that had the third most errors this year and the most dummy half runs of any Super League game in 2018 so far, with 69.
I think both of those play to the conditions, though, don't they? And,
yes.
and the biblical rain in that first 20 minutes.
Well, both sides ran out of dummy half more than 30 times in the game, so yeah, it does suggest that. In terms of the stats, there actually was only a small number of stat markers met by the Hull KR side. Will Oakes 109 metres, Ben Kavanagh 103 metres, and Craig Hall 2 tries. Whereas for the losing Hull FC side, they had a lot of good stat performers, but maybe didn't deliver the right execution in the right parts of the field. Jamie Shaw 9 tackles, 147 metres. Barita Ferramo 1 try assist, 176 metres. Carlos Tumavave 209 metres, 3 successful offloads, and Danny Houghton a try assist, 49 tackles, 15 marker tackles, and 103 metres both ways.
Yeah, mate.
Right, final game on Friday, one that we probably don't need to talk too much about. It was Wigan 25, Catalan Dragons 20. It was 8-6 at half time. Relatively disappointing, but this is what you get at this stage against Catalan, and Wigan are in a bit of a lull, as we'll get to in one of the fan reviews. 10,656. Scott Mickey Mouse Cast was the referee. Fan reviews.
Yeah, Carsten says, I watched the game on Wigan Fan TV and I have no real idea what was going on, except the send-off of the moral vacuum and a Wigan win. I love the idea, and Matt is definitely one of a kind.
Yeah, so people who aren't really aware of Wigan Fan TV, I pop up there occasionally as a contributor with Sean Lawless, and his regular sidekick is Matt McCauley, who's I think he fancies himself as a comedian. Basically, he is a character. He's a funny bloke. He's certainly one of a kind, like Carsten says. They did like an alternative commentary of the game. So basically, if you weren't at the game, you could watch them through Facebook, through the Wigan Fan TV and blog page, and you'd be seeing their reactions. They'd kind of talk through the game. Shaw did his best to kind of commentate to an extent, but certainly never pretended this was going to be a commentary. Matt threw in irreverence at every opportunity. I watched little bits of it, but my particular bit was right at the start, where the players came out and they were sat in the press box were Sean and Matt, but Matt's dad sat with them, who normally sits with Matt lower down in the west stand, and Matt's dad stood up to start clapping, and Matt just like taps him and says, "Dad, we're in the press box, sit down." So
brilliant. It's a brilliant initiative, and I think it's quite a fun thing to do. I remember I used to listen to a rugby union thing called the Alternative Rugby Commentary, which was this crazed Kiwi bloke going on and had all nicknames for the players and all sorts. He was basically a comedian who did a bit of rugby commentary while he was going. I even went to go and see him do a live one up in Chiswick once, and it was just absolutely hilarious. And he came up with a great line of New Zealand is what Wales wants to be when it grows up. So did enjoy that in particular. So I think all the more to this sort of thing, and hope it continues and they do another one.
It's still there on Facebook. You can catch the sort of highlights that Sean clipped together. Happy anniversary today to Sean. I think it's his average second or his third wedding anniversary. I can't remember exactly, but happy
I thought you were going to say it was Wigan Fan TV's anniversary.
No. Wedding anniversary. David Lawrenson at David Lorrow says, and this is a long one, and it probably would have fit in the feedback, but I think it fits better into the match review overall. He says, I've slowly been falling out with this sport this season. I presently follow a club with a significant player exodus, the coach is leaving, no fixtures for next year, no clear indication of the format of the league for next year, plus an unknown number of Thursday night games, and now the club have the temerity to ask me to pay for next year's season ticket with 3 weeks' notice while serving up the anodyne mediocrity that we saw tonight. This is a club taking advantage of loyal fans and quietly distancing itself from the 15,000 who turned up on a Thursday night to watch the derby game, a game that deserves so much more respect than being a sop to a midweek TV audience. My passion for the sport peters out, as does my support for Wigan.
A few interesting points in there. I think the Thursday night one is a big one for me because it's a fair point when it's, I think there should be some, from a fan's point of view, there should be some sort of limit that says no team will play more than X number of home Thursdays. I think that's fair enough.
The irritants for me on the Thursday night thing is that we had one of them through Little Mix, two of them through Sky scheduling. We had 3 in 4 weeks. And two of the biggest 3 home games of the season with that, so it did affect the atmosphere on those. It affected the crowd to some extent, although it affected the Wigan crowd way more than the Saints crowd. They turned up in numbers. We didn't do as well likewise, and I think that points to some of the other factors. I like David. I've met David in person. He's a shrewd thinker. He's a smart guy. He's a sharp operator. The only thing I disagree with him on is the Thursday night thing, because I like Thursday nights. I think we've got an opportunity to push an audience there. Darts sells itself out on a Thursday night and gets an atmosphere going. Rugby league can do better. The teams can market it better. The teams can figure out a way of getting around it. They can make the fans who genuinely can't prioritise Thursday night fixtures because of other things in their life, make them feel like they're not losing out while still plugging these games, getting them going. The problem is this next fucking 7 weeks where we don't know what Thursday night games will go in, and I seriously suspect Wigan Castleford will be the first Sky Thursday night game to kick off the Super 8s period, so that'll be 3 out of 4 home games against all our big opponents on Thursday nights. That's not ideal, and that's what I'm expecting to be announced on Wednesday. No inside knowledge of it. I just feel like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think they're a great idea and a great, and certainly for me as a fan who's outside anyway, going to ever be able to get to a game on a Thursday or Friday night. They're my favourite game to watch of the week.
For me, as a fan, I'd much rather Thursdays than Saturdays and Sundays. It's a regular because it's easier for me to work my life around. I know it's not the same for everyone. I know David takes his I think he's got a youngish son that he likes to take to games as well. So I get the point. It's the other stuff though. Wigan put out a thing this week, emailing all the fans who signed up to this new direct debit auto renewal scheme. We expected that we would get contacted in September about a payment in October. That's what we all expected. We thought, great, it'll give us a chance to pay for the season ticket. Probably it'll be all prepared, so we're more likely to get them in time for Christmas. People who use them as Christmas presents and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
For it to come in August, in the middle of holiday season, without more than 4 weeks warning, it was about 3.5 weeks warning, really, they gave us 3 to 4 weeks warning, whilst we didn't have a coach announced, whilst we were just watching our team play shit, but the only 2 players who were really playing well for us, knowing that they're leaving at the end of the season, even though one of them hasn't been announced, not really knowing outside of, a cokehead who gets himself in trouble everywhere he's been, what we've got coming in next season. Rumours abound about all of our best players that aren't even the ones that we know are going. So, George Williams, everyone fucking wants him. It's in the paper every week that he's meant. So someone's shopping him around. Because otherwise, why would there be so many unless Aaron Barrow and Matthew Shaw have no credibility as journalists, which I can't imagine given the positions they hold in the journalism in this sport, and the newspaper that Aaron writes for, the magazine that Matthew's now the editor of, all those sorts of things, that they don't have any credibility. So they're printing rumours that they must have double sourced. Otherwise, why would they be printing them? Someone's shopping that around about George Williams, even if Wigan are saying it is not for sale, and I hope he's not for sale. Sean O'Loughlin, what's happening with him? Tommy Luluai, we now do know, but for a while we didn't know. Lots of conversations.
Do we know that? Sorry.
Yeah, he's. Well, we don't know if it's not been made sure, but basically he wants to and the club want to, so it seems like he's going to be playing another season. But yeah, all those sorts of things play into this, and then we've gone back to playing the style of, well, I say style, we've gone back to playing the crap that we played most of last year, that we played the year before with ample mitigation for injuries, but this year we don't necessarily have the same mitigation. We did in this game to an extent, but not really. It's not been good enough. And so I can understand David's feelings. Wigan's attendances are going to be the lowest they're going to have been since the early noughts in Super League. That's not good enough.
Since the relegation era.
That year when Brian Noble came in, we had a big pickup in our crowds, and we actually had probably our second best average attendance over the whole, second or third best over the whole Super League period. We picked up in the Michael Maguire era as well. But it's been steadily declining, and this year it's taken a fucking nosedive, and it's not good enough. And whatever reasons, excuses, explanations, whatever, this game was a fine example of it. It didn't entertain. Sam Tompkins and John Bateman were the best two players on the pitch by a distance for Wigan. Wigan let a much more spirited Catalan side well back into this game, even though they'd had a man sent off. I think it was a send off. It was late and high. He's got send off sufficient, probably helpful that it's a week thing next week. I don't remember what either the Tau Tai or the Bird Grade D dangerous contact instance that they've got. I'm trying to wait for the write-ups to come because I don't know what happened there.
No, I did watch the highlights back to see if they featured these, but they didn't. But they didn't even capture. I'd only seen it as a separate clip. That you'd showed me the moral vacuum, sending off. But
Wigan's
they didn't actually include it on the highlights themselves. But I definitely think it was a sending off.
Yeah.
Because I think if you look at the speed it was at, but I think it was a reckless rather than malicious. So I think sending off sufficient is fine.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with that given the game they've got next week. Morgan Esquire scored a quality try at the start of the second half, and Wigan backed that up with another try straight away after, and I kind of thought we were going to get our roll on here. Even the patched up backup Golden Edge was producing, but it didn't quite come that way. I want to give a big shout out to Julian Bousquet. People have talked a lot about Remy Cassie recently, Greg Bird, and Kenny Edwards, the moral vacuum to an extent as well. Sam Moe was pretty powerful in this game. He was hit as hard as he hit it out, so that was pretty impressive. But Julian Bousquet, for me, is a sneaky outsider for my dream team thoughts, because he's been outstanding recently. Ooh. And he was outstanding again in this game. It was a real momentum changing kind of performance in this game, I felt. I just wanted to give that shout out to him. Joe Greenwood still doesn't quite look fit, but he scored his first try for Wigan. Chris Hankinson took a great kick from Sam Tompkins to score his first try for Wigan. They were highlights from a Wigan point of view. But other than that, it wasn't an entertaining game. As has been shown by us talking more about the off-field situation that's leading to a few Wigan fans feeling a few Wigan fans who are serious Wigan fans who have real passion and real determination to get the club right, like David does, and it disheartens me to hear what he's saying. I hope it turns around for him, because I like him.
And do you think that the reason behind a lot of the malaise and thing is because certain key administrators in a high up position have been taking their eyes off the ball of the club itself and worrying more about the ecosystem around them, possibly?
And do you know what? It's not necessarily a bad thing that he's been doing that. We've had people run the club before who've gone on to do and help turn the sport around at various times.
Morris Lindsay.
Increase the impetus behind the game. And I think a lot of what Lenigan said, I know a lot of people disagree with him, and there's things in there that I don't like either, but there's an ultimate goal there that the top level has to be right first, that I'm fully on board with. And I think a lot of the goings-on have supported that, to be completely honest. But there's maybe an element of that. But But really, he probably thought the club was in good hands with experienced people now. Chris Rodlinski's been doing his job for a couple of years. Matty Peake's been running his section of the club for a couple of years. Mark Bitkin's been there for nearly a decade, and